So here we will do a tech pulse. Where are we going? What's important in terms of regulation? Where is the cash flowing? So I want a couple of people to join me up on stage, and let's see it in the order. Agata Hidalgo, Simon Schaefer, Sam Eshrati, and Jens Ingelstedt. Warm rockstar welcome.
Okay, I'll go here.
There you go.
So this is like we started prepping 2 weeks ago, but then last week we have to address the elephant in the room. Simon, you're wearing a little bit of a cap here. There was a big announcement last week, straight from Davos. EU Inc.
Yeah, that's right.
What happened?
So Ursula von der Leyen, or let's put it this way, the Commission has been looking at the EU Inc. from various angles, calling it the 28th regime themselves, which is a concept that it just exists in Brussels for several years already. It's a virtual member state. And then last week, Tuesday, big stage in Davos, Ursula walks on stage and actually rebrands the 28th regime to EU Inc., which we thought would never be possible because it sounds so American. It's not really fitting our times to be American sounding, right? And we had no idea this was happening.
No. So you told me earlier you were sitting in a call with your team, with the group, and then all of a sudden von der Leyen on stage in Davos says, we're going to focus on EU Inc. now.
Yeah, drop your pens.
Drop your pens.
Stop talking.
Stop talking.
She just called it out.
So you all are like the ecosystem builders. You've been working with trying to improve the startup ecosystem in Europe for a very long time. Agata, you've been working at Digital France. Now you're working with one of the most exciting areas, fusion and the energy. Simon, factory, really pushing the startup ecosystem, especially in Southern Europe and Portugal. I think we met in Web Summit like years and years ago when you said that Portugal is the new capital of Europe in startups. Sam, Tech Barbecue, VC investments, building small-scale VCs, connecting with startups all over the space. And then Jens, now building hackathons, providing tools to the next stage founders. So what's, like, from a perspective now, EU Inc., Simon, why is that so important?
Well, look, 27 member states, not a single same jurisdiction, investability, non-existent across borders. It's so obvious. Our corporate law was designed from before the internet. Let that sink in for a second. How is that rule book supposed to govern how innovators behave? So it's very simple and very easy to say, even Delaware is not a great option. Also, Delaware was created before the internet. It makes a lot of sense if our innovation economy shifts to a completely new academic and economic model, startups, makes a lot of sense for our framework to adjust to it. And that's why we suggested, look, if we can't invest from Germany to Slovenia to Spain without identifying a million gotchas, why not create one simple rule book across the block for all? And that rang a bell.
Yeah. So one simple rule book for Europe. Just quick yes or no answer. Is it possible, Agata?
With the right political will, I think so.
Yes. Simon?
Yes.
Sam, yes?
Yes.
100%. I think there's a sense of urgency now.
So I'm going to be, so I will take a position here and say, I see the challenges, and I'm going to say no. Because I think that it's, for example, Italy and Sweden to have the same rules, and I want it to start there. Like, where is innovation heading right now? What's important for Europe, from your perspective, Agata?
I think it's to be very bold and assertive. The geopolitical situation we live in today demands it. And in past crises, we have shown that we can act out of urgency and outside of the box. So that's why I do believe if leaders get to agree, we can get things done. I'm very positive about that. In my industry, in fusion, we were talking about it earlier, we are at a make it or break it moment. Fusion can be for Europe what semiconductors were to Taiwan in the late 80s. So either we seize the momentum or we let another train pass. We don't want to let that happen. A lot of companies, a lot of people in Europe, very smart people, are working towards, making the next wave of industrial innovation on this continent. Let them do it.
Yeah. And when you're saying this, like, okay, fusion and energy innovation can be for Europe what semiconductors were for Taiwan in the 80s. It's been like Taiwan's built the biggest part of their economy on this. Why are we not acting faster?
The billion-dollar question, right? We're probably too stuck discussing finding things. Instead, we should agree that we have common priorities, leave aside small petty national interests, and act for the common good. We can be powerful on the world stage because we have an even bigger market than the US, to be fair, in terms of amount of people. We just need to leverage that collectively. And there's no better time to do that. Power is shifting in the world. We just signed a big trade deal with India. You can think whatever you want about it, but that doesn't hide the fact that India is a massive economy. China is a massive economy. Korea, Japan, they are also moving a lot in many innovative sectors, fusion and not that only, AI, robotics, you mentioned it. So it's important to look what the US does, but the world is big. There's so much else to look around, and there's an opportunity that Europe can seize.
Yeah. Simon, what sectors are you seeing accelerating?
I think industrialization and automation, AI. I think what's worth noting in terms of speed is what's the core of the problem. The core of the problem is Europe is a peace project built on compromise, meaning it's not built for the current environment we're in. This was built during American hegemony, that's falling apart. So I think it's very clear that we need to react to that and we need to shift. And what you usually see during wartime, and I hate to bring this up because it always sounds negative, but you see an incredibly fast adoption of technology. And we see that right now. And I think for us to benefit the most from it, we need to understand that only as a collective bloc we're able to participate in this innovation. And federalization is the big elephant in the room, actually. Something not many people want to say, but very hard to avoid in the geostrategic environment we're in right now.
Yeah. Sam, Identity Ventures, you've been a part of this ecosystem for a long time. You've seen a lot of startups. What are you seeing accelerating?
I think I agree with Simon. There's a new trend of AI has been fantastic line of investment, but I believe automation in the healthcare, also procurement, factories is the next phase where you're hoping a robot can conduct a full-on surgery in the surgery room for hours and remotely control from another continent. That's where next phase of investment and the startup should be, and I believe we're going to.
Yeah. Yeah, but we talked about the lights out factory for years, for example. We don't want to move away from the shifts. We want to create a better workspace for workers and so on. Jens, what are you seeing in terms of what are your builders building?
Good question. I mean, in general, I think it's a super interesting trend in Europe at the moment where talent is clustering. I think we're getting better and better to actually retain, keep the top talent, to cluster them and have clusters throughout Europe where you have a higher talent density and really bringing the value and the knowledge a lot from Y Combinator and other good entities in the US, for example, and really taking that knowledge back to Sweden on how to, and Europe, on how to build companies. I mean, the last year has been a lot about kind of vertical AI wrappers and specialized agents, etc. And I don't know if it's done. There's probably a few more use cases to build, but it's moving more and more into more complex things and hardware. I think Europe is very ready and set to build quite advanced stuff in robotics, etc. as well.
Is it like AI losing momentum? No.
New phase, I think it would be there. And one thing I forgot, so if you remember the dot-com boom, shortly after the dot-com boom, we had another boom, and that was on antiviruses. So I think the new phase, it would be something will filter AI and revolutionize in the filtration and authentication and AI.
Yeah. But Agata, for example, what you're doing, fusion, doesn't sound like the easiest thing to do.
Indeed, it's not. And I'll even comment on the AI point, because I think also AI is kind of at a tipping point. Everyone is looking at generative AI, at the agents, trying to find all the added value, and some people are struggling to find it. And what I would say is that this is a very good year to show AI can bring that value. And I now see it from the inside. In my company, in Renaissance Fusion, we need tons of AI and tons of computing power, but not for agents. We need it for modeling, very complex physics modeling, plasma modeling, fusion machine modeling. We're hiring some of the best AI scientists and data scientists out there and trying to build connections with, computing clusters, public and private, including with European companies wherever possible, because we need that computing power. So yeah, trying to achieve a fusion energy, which is basically the energy that powers the star, is extremely complex to do on Earth. But the thing is that with AI, we can now confidently say we can do it in 10 years' time, which was not the case before. We've been knowing the physics for decades now, but now we can make it happen. And the thing is not we're just doing an AI model. We are building machines, back to your point on industrialization, Simon. In Grenoble, where we're based in France, we are building pilot lines of our enabling technologies. And some of them, for example, superconducting magnets, we can also sell to other industries. We can sell to healthcare, for example, for MRI machines, to wind energy, to telecom, energy transport, energy storage. So all the innovation that we're building for us can also benefit others and create a lot of jobs in a new industrial space. So I'm very excited about what's to come.
So just to recap, what you're saying is that we know that we can do fusion in Europe in 10 years' time.
Yes, we know. There's some 10 companies in Europe today working on that, including one here in Sweden, Novatron, you may know about them. And we're all on quite similar timelines, and we're extra confident because fusion has been achieved scientifically in Germany, in the US, in China. We can do it. We know we can do it. Our challenge is how do we do it in an economically viable way, and our bet is that our machine will be the cheapest and easiest to run.
Okay, so capital is really important.
It is.
So, Sam, then we want to go to your area of specialty here. Capital. How does this work? If you want to raise money for such a project like fusion, what stars has to align?
There is one factor in the current status of European capital, and we don't have late stage capital available, especially in Nordics. And if you look at it, for the last few years, contribution from institutional investors. So for some of you who don't know, the funnel is LPs, VCs, and startups. LPs are the main provider of capital to VCs, and VCs to startups. We have some major contributors to the capital. Sorry about my voices keep going off. Institutional capital contribution has been decreasing in Europe. And some of them actually sit with trillions of wealth in Europe, and given the fact pension capitals are the majority of the providers, your money, my money goes actually to pension capital, and their contribution is 0.007% goes to venture capitals. So the majority of money actually been disappearing to different asset classes. We have 15 trillion capital on the pension funds, and only 2 billion went to venture last year. To unlock such a big project, we need those capital to be funneled in to venture, therefore to bigger projects. We sit with very incredible pension capitals in Nordics, and that goes back again to European sovereignty, and that's, I feel like, yes, we can do this, but we also need another factor, that's the capital to be released towards venture. Danish capital, 59 investments, and non-existent in Europe, and they all went to US.
Yes.
And trillions went to the US capital market, nothing in Europe.
Yeah.
0.7%.
Yeah. So we're not missing innovation, we're not missing the builders, we're losing the innovation and the builders.
But look, it's very similar to the challenges we have with scaling a business. Why would a venture capital fund that works out of Germany look at investing in Spain? Like, the incentives are not there. And we believe that by homogenizing this market or harmonizing this market, we will see more transnational or cross-border investments. Thus, the fund sizes will grow as well. It's a chicken and egg problem. We've always been sort of working on small details in lobbies, in startup lobbyism, for small details on like employee stock option programs, cross-border hiring, VAT. No, there's a systemic issue. And we believe that corporate law is at the core of it, and that will change a lot, and for venture capital to follow logically, because the deals will become more accessible, the funding rounds will need to grow because you will want to be and will be able to scale across borders, and then more funding needs to be available and will come. Venture capital usually follows the deal flow, not the other way around, no?
They do, but they also need the money to invest, right?
Yeah, no. Pension funds needs to happen,
right.
But they won't happen if they don't see enough deal flow or possible returns.
I think we do have a lot of incredible talented founders in Europe.
We do, no doubt.
But when they need to have money to exit, that's lacking in Europe.
that's chicken and egg yet again, right? I mean, if we can't scale across, then and we won't be able to exit on a stock exchange. That's the next topic to tackle: the capital markets union and a common stock exchange. But we need to start somewhere. So that would be my argument on why, at the core, would be corporate law. It's the basis, and from there we can scale and grow.
But do we have a problem with risk appetite? Yes.
Yeah, I think it's a mentality challenge as well, and that there's definitely more of a risk appetite in the US, for example, for the difficult things, right? The moonshot ideas, and that's really what you should be looking for in venture or angel investing in general. Yeah, in Europe in general, we tend to more look at the numbers, and we try to take less risk. And there's also in the US more of a custom to buy from startups as well. Startups buy from other startups, scale-ups buy from startups, larger corporates buy from startups. And that's not happening to the same extent here. So we should really try to focus on that, maybe create incentives for that to happen as well, because that's massively important, right? A lot of European founders are incorporating in the US and focusing on the US market because it's easier to get traction, it's easier to sell over there because there's more of a tradition to buy from startups.
Yeah, we heard from for example, Yuval from Sana. We did a big interview. It's like, okay, what was the main lessons? And he said, go to the US faster. And then we need to, what we were talking about here is that you need to change culture. One could also argue that this has to do with biology, because risk is sort of like this gene. You have research saying that entrepreneurs has a bit like a different type of gene because they take more risk naturally. And even though it doesn't seem like that right now, that US is actually built on immigrants. They took the boats from Europe over. They didn't know what to expect. They sort of acted on a letter, and then they just went there, and then they built a country and took over the country. So, like, biologically, they can take more risks too. But what do we need to make fusion happen? Is it like, Agata, you've been working in the policy space for a very long time. So in terms of policies, what needs to change?
I just want to pick up briefly on what you said about the drivers of the entrepreneurs and about like being open to talent from abroad. Our company was built by a physics professor from Italy who left Columbia in the US to build a company in France. And now we have 24 nationalities in the company. And that's the #1 key ingredient to make fusion happen in Europe. You need the world's best talent. That talent is scarce. Today there are some 80 fusion companies in the world. We want to have as much of that talent in Europe. So first is talent attraction. Let's get the best people and make them feel at home here in Europe to work for our companies. The second is, of course, capital. We need a lot of it. Interestingly, in our cap table today, you will find traditional evergreen investors like the Crédit Mutuel in France, Impact, but also international investors like lower carbon capital, or Norscan VC. All this to say, even traditional investors in Europe can see the economic interest of the long-term bet, and deep tech is a long-term bet. And that's why also the European Investment Fund, for example, is now funding more deep tech funds across Europe, including in VC firms that are not traditionally deep tech. So that is also giving me hope. When it comes to regulation, we're in an extremely funny situation. We're trying to do something that no one has ever done commercially in history. So there's no rules for that. Like, no one really knows in which box we fit. There's different schools of thought at play as of now. But countries like Germany and Finland, Sweden is also in discussion, are being very bold and saying, okay, we need some rules that are light enough to allow innovation, but that are appropriate for fusion. And this is what we would like to see at European level. Stop the fragmentation, stop the doubts, tell us confidently that we can build fusion energy plants in Europe. So that's the kind of regulation I'm looking for.
Yeah, that's it.
Can I add something about the talent? So 42% of the unicorn founders in the US are immigrants.
Yeah.
In Sweden in particular, it would take 24 months to hire somebody from non-European country as a startup founder. So if we decide to unite Europe and Sweden becomes a bar for attracting talents, we are practically ruined.
But there are ways,
So-
in Sweden, for example, there are ways around that. If you have the EU Blue Card as an example, it's like as a startup founder, I just have to pay bigger wages. I can hire them as a specialist. I can hire them. I can't pay 25,000 SEK a month or 40,000 SEK a month. If I pay the 50,000 SEK a month, I can hire them. But
Well, you
also
tell me which
research.
startup can afford to have 4 talented people with the same range of salary?
No, but if that's the thing. Like, it comes back maybe to a capital problem. Because if I'm going to the US, I know if I'm moving to San Francisco right now, my salary will quadruple, even if I'm working for a startup. So is this a funding thing too?
No, because we do have early stage capital available in Europe.
Yeah.
We are not talking about that stage of hiring people.
Yeah.
It's late stage we have problem. But I think going back to regulation, this is something we need to be careful of. Uniting Europe actually might,
But is it,
does have something.
back to Simon, is Europe too big? If it started as a peace project, is it too big of a map to change? Should we focus on the Nordic?
No, well, there's definitely merit in the small countries aligning, right? You
Yeah.
can see it in Estonia or CEE, you can see it in the south. So that definitely works if all else fails. But why not try? My glass is always half full. I'm an entrepreneur at the end. I think what we're missing from this conversation on the table is the exit channels. We do not have 7 trillion euro companies that are buying up IP or teams in acqui-hires. And without a proper exit channel, venture capital cannot grow. So this is, again, a chicken and egg problem. I would argue the core thing we need to watch out for is startups is a numerical game. It's a mathematical game. We need more startups. Okay, what do we need to do for more startups? We need to make funding, scaling, and founding significantly easier. That's why we said the first thing to tackle is the EU Inc. That's the first thing we need to do. What follows suit is more startups. What does more startups bring? More unicorns, more demand for capital to be deployed, more venture capital, more exits. So it's really a nucleus problem, chicken and egg. We need to start somewhere, and that's why we believe EU Inc. is such an integral component.
And Sam, you've been talking about this tech barbecue in different forms for many years. What's the key to more exits then?
Wow. That's, I think, again goes back to the appetite and the culture, and also role models advocating to exit in Europe. So we had a couple of incredible unicorn founders in Europe past few months that were saying, run away from Europe, go to US and exit.
Jens, and what are you hearing from the entrepreneurs that you're meeting? You've been sort of in the epicenter in Stockholm, and you've been working a lot with the AI. You've met all of the great founders that all of in the entire world is talking about right now. What's the sentiment?
In terms of?
In terms of like, this is my plan, this is what we're trying to build, this is the exit plan, or do they have an exit plan?
I hear more and more focus on staying in Europe and building in Europe. I think there's definitely a mental shift that happened in the last year, and I mean EU Inc. is
even if they're
definitely
American
something
companies,
that is pushing towards.
even if they're like the Swedish-based startups are American companies.
Yeah, exactly. Even so, which might be a bit hypocritical in some sense, but I think as soon as we have this 28 regime, I think a lot of them will incorporating in that. I hope so.
Yeah.
I think
Same.
a lot of people are looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I think Lovable is a great example because the sentiment is I want to build in Europe, but what I'm doing I cannot finance in Europe. No. So there's a Delaware Inc. that needs to be in place. Yeah. And he actually went public saying that this is probably a solution to a problem I've had earlier on LinkedIn. So I think many will follow suit, and we've changed from the bottle cap versus the rocket meme against Europe to pro-Europe not that long ago. So let's ride that train, please. I mean, it's important for all of us.
Yeah. We're going to continue this conversation in podcast format because we have so much more to talk about here, but we only have 2 more minutes, and I do want to finish on this, like painting the picture, being more ambitious. So Agatha, from your perspective, you've already sort of started luring to that, but what is the single biggest opportunity in European tech right now?
Well, everyone, advocates for its sector, but I truly believe fusion is an opportunity for Europe, and it's not just me saying it. If we check the data on the best funded sectors in 2025, first is AI, then biotech, and then it's energy. And energy is being driven a lot by fusion today. So I think we have a historic opportunity to build a new industry that is sovereign, that can have most of its supply chain in Europe. Let's seize it, as Taiwan has done with semiconductors before. Yeah. It's possible.
And if you listen to Jensen in Davos, he said that AI is a 5-layer cake and the basis of everything is energy.
Absolutely.
Simon, what's the biggest opportunity in tech in Europe right now?
Learn everything we can from Ukraine and what's going on there, and actually make sure that we, as much as possible, implement those technologies in combination with our industrial heritage. So look at Germany, look at France, look at some of the manufacturing capacities we have. That goes together with the innovation taking place in the East right now.
Yeah. Sam, biggest opportunity?
I'm going to be industry specific, and that is deep tech. I think what we are here for, it would be super, super important. And look at latest investments from the Nordic country flooding into deep tech, and Novo Nordisk, the biggest foundation in the world that actually invested in quantum and going to be the key. We have the talent in Europe. Let's not lose the game to non-European country. Quantum, deep tech should remain in Europe, and I think we have talent, we have R&D, we have capital. That should be the key driver in Europe. Yeah. Industry-specific deep tech.
And energy feels quite important for quantum
similar,
too.
Exactly.
Yeah. Jens?
The talent, right? Being able to identify talent early, focusing on the clusters, because we see a lot of things have moved in the last year where top talent from all over Europe is clustering. A lot of people are paying attention to it. They form hacker houses. They build different kind of programs, etc. We should really pay close attention to it to identify the top founders and builders, help them out, come in early to give them capital that they need, and have them incorporate in Europe, and make sure we have them stay, and also make it easy for them to attract US employees, for example. So that's really the focus. Top talent.
Top talent.
Yep.
Top talent and hackathons. And on that note, finishing off that note, Jens, you have something coming later.
Yeah, exactly. We've been teaming up with the Chalmers AI Society. Back there, it's a hackathon with 100 engineers. They've been pushing hard, building for the last 24 hours. And I think in an hour and a half or something, they're going to be, 2 of them will be presenting here. And then right before that, 4 of them will be kind of qualifying on the other stage. So if you want to check it out, you can go to the hackathon. You can watch the 4 winners over there, and then the 2 best ones in here.
And if you want to see how far you can get in such a short time as well.
Exactly.
Panel, thank you so much. I hope you take the chance and the opportunity to grab them here, talk to them, ask your question, especially about the energy, especially about EU Inc. funding early stage, but then also exiting, and then obviously the new talent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.